Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are live. Apologies for a little bit delay today. This is due to personal conversation we had, important one. So my kind of fault in a way, but it's all good. Thank
No,
you,
I take
Scott, again for
responsibility.
joining me. Thank you so much. No, it's fine. Thank you so much for joining me today for another great live stream, I hope. And I would like to ask all of you who are going to watch us, please hit this like. It really helps with YouTube algorithm. More people see the interviews and more people are introduced to those kind of topics that they normally don't find on the mainstream media, as you know, they will hardly ever find it. And also, those of you who are interested in supporting Scott's work, go on scottreader.com. The link is down below the video already, below the live stream. And you can get the book, which is covering Ukraine, covering Ukraine, the Scott Reader interviews through the eyes of Anya Kay. That is moi. And yeah, the link is already there. Those of you who have been already in lucky position to have this book, because I know sometimes waiting time takes a moment, please be so kind and leave the review. If you don't feel comfortable writing the review, you can just choose the number of stars, and it also helps with promoting the book. All right, Scott, let's jump to my questions because I don't want to take more of your time. We will start with Israel, then we go to Ukraine for a moment, and then I have kind of question that you probably don't expect, but I really want to ask. So, Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant promised an Israeli strike against Iran, saying this: whoever attacks us will be hurt and will pay the price, and it will be deadly. Deadly, precise, and above all, surprising. They will not understand what happened and how it happened. They will see the results. On Wednesday, I think yesterday, right? Netanyahu had a call with Biden. When I hear this kind of news, I'm like, this is just Twilight Zone, really, because how Biden can have any call with anyone. But apparently they had a call, and Biden said that Israeli response should be proportional. So my question here is actually two-part question. What kind of response is to be expected from Israel? And what are Israelis' possibilities here?
Well, we have to answer that, we have to talk about the consequences of an Israeli response. Iran has made it clear that it won't tolerate any response, proportional or disproportional, it doesn't matter. Iran will then proceed to destroy Israel with thousands of ballistic missiles. And Israel, as good as they think they don't have the ability to preempt the totality of Iranians' ballistic missile capabilities. They may be able to destroy a couple launchers here, a couple missiles there, but Iran has the capability of deploying thousands of missiles. The Iranians also recently came out and said that Hezbollah's long-range missile strike capability has been restored. I guess there was a period of time where command and control and confusion had diminished it, but that it's restored, which means now Hezbollah will be able to throw its weight in. The Houthi have also demonstrated an ability to strike, as have the Iraqi militias. But the bottom line is Iran has made it clear that any attack against Iran will result in the destruction of critical infrastructure in Israel, up to $100 billion worth of critical infrastructure. We're talking about power plants, desalination plants, power distribution plants, oil production, gas production, energy distribution, critical lines of communication. These are soft targets. Iran has proven that the Israeli defense shield doesn't work, that these targets are all literally sitting ducks, and they will be destroyed. This will take Israel back to the Stone Age. So now Israel has to decide, is Iran bluffing? And I think the answer is no, Iran's not bluffing. So I don't know what Israel is going to do and when it's going to do this. I would also be careful about reading too much into the Biden phone call. The Biden administration understands that this is a death sentence for Israel if they attack Iran. And it's designed by Israel to draw America into a war that it can't win, and it politically Biden can't afford to fight right now. The conversation, if in the lead up to the conversation, Biden had been promising Israel that if they not attack critical sites in Iran or avoid an attack altogether, that Biden will open up the armory of America and give Israel whatever arms they want, as if Israel needed more American bombs to put on American planes to drop on civilians in Gaza and Lebanon and murder them. But the United States apparently thinks it's okay to kill innocent civilians as long as they're Arabs. But he also said the United States will back Israel up, and this is an important point diplomatically, that the United States will make sure that Israel never suffers a diplomatic defeat again. Shortly after that phone call, the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations met with the Security Council, and for the first time threw her weight behind 2 United Nations resolutions calling for an immediate ceasefire and Israeli withdrawal forces from Gaza. The United States had been blocking these resolutions in the lead up to this. Clearly, the phone call between Joe Biden and Netanyahu did not go well, because what the United States has done immediately is demonstrate to Israel that you are going to pay a price. And here's the first price you're going to pay. We're not backing you in the United Nations anymore. And if you want to continue doing this, understand that the international community is already calling for your head on a platter. We aren't going to be blocking them anymore. And this is something for Netanyahu to think about, because in addition to the United States not willing to participate in an Israeli attack against Iran, and Israel can't really sustain an attack against Iran without American participation. In the United States, even though they say they're ready to defend Iran, demonstrated that the American ships aren't capable of shooting. We shot down 12 missiles. Well, we fired 12 interceptors, where I'm assuming that they hit 12 targets. But these were advanced SM-3 interceptors. You know how many SM-3s we make a year? We fired 12. You know how many make in a year? 12. So we fired a year's worth of SM-3 production. We don't have that many. And Iran's going to fire, the next time is going to fire over 1,000 missiles and probably repeat it with another salvo of 1,000. So 2,000 missiles will be inbound. Israel can't defend against that. Israel will be destroyed. And nothing the United States can do to prevent that. But here's the scary thing, because if Israel gets destroyed, and it will, what is Israel going to do? And the thought is that Israel may use its nuclear weapons to retaliate against Iran at that juncture, because it's become an existential struggle. But Iran has just put the world on notice that it is now a nuclear power. It didn't say we have a bomb, but what they did say was fascinating. They said that previously we didn't build a bomb because of a fatwa issued by successive supreme leaders, Ayatollah Khomeini and now Khamenei, who said that weapons of mass destruction are incompatible with Islam. But now you've got a senior member of the Expediency Discernment Council, which advises the supreme leader on all issues, national security and internal domestic issues, which of course religious fatwas are. A senior member of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. These are the soldiers of the supreme leader, religiously oriented. And now you have the Iranian parliament, a senior member of the Iranian parliament coming out, and they're saying that Iran must build a nuclear weapon. Now, they wouldn't be saying this unless the supreme leader has said what they have all said, that the fatwa can be changed if there is an existential threat to Islam in the Islamic Republic, which an Israeli nuclear strike would represent. And if the fatwa is changed, then Iran would pursue nuclear weapons. You don't make this kind of statement. This is known as declaratory policy. You don't make this kind of statement unless you're ready and willing to back it up. And I think that this statement was made at a time when Iran has assembled all of the components of a nuclear bomb, deliverable by an Iranian nuclear missile. The only thing that's missing is the fissile material, which Iran can produce in a matter of days because they've accumulated a significant stockpile of uranium hexafluoride enriched to 60%. Uranium hexafluoride is the feedstock for the centrifuges that Iran has to use to enrich uranium. And Iran has configured several cascades of their most advanced centrifuges. When I say advanced, these spin things up quickly. These aren't the old IR1s, IR2s. These are the IR4s, 6s, 8s. They spin very quickly. They'll feed this 60% uranium hexafluoride in. Instantly, it will be 96 to 98%. That's what's needed for a nuclear bomb. They have the ability to convert it into metal. If they use a crude gun style device, that means they just have to calculate the critical mass principles, take out a slug, put it in the gun device, fire it at the appropriate time. An explosion in the device fires this uranium slug into the uranium core. It goes critical. We have fission, and we have a 15 to 20 kiloton nuclear explosion over Tel Aviv, over Haifa, over Beersheba, and it's the end of Israel. This can be done instantly. All the components are in place. That's my assessment. My assessment that Iran is now a de facto nuclear power, which means that there will be a nuclear retaliation against Israel if it uses nuclear weapons against Iran, which means Israel ceases to exist. It's a small country with tightly certain population density points. It takes 3 to 5 nuclear weapons, and Israel will never exist again, ever. And this is a reality that the United States now has to deal with. And remember, we're talking about successive American administrations, from Barack Obama to Donald Trump to Joe Biden, who said that Iran will never be allowed to develop a nuclear weapon. Well, thanks to American policy now, Iran has nuclear weapons capability, which means that if we want to get involved in the game, they'll be able to retaliate against us too, not in the United States, but against American facilities in the region. This is a game-changing event, and what this all boils down to is that America has put world peace and our own national security interests and the survival of nation states in the hands of an insane genocidal maniac named Benjamin Netanyahu, who Joe Biden is on record with the reporter Bob Woodward, who's publishing a book soon, is saying that Benjamin Netanyahu is a crazy son of a you-know-what. He's insane. He's a liar. He's the worst human being on the planet. This is the President of the United States saying this about the Israeli Prime Minister, and yet now it's come down to the Israeli Prime Minister having all of this power in his hands, because the decisions he's going to make in the next couple of days are decisions that will impact everything I just talked about. The world's gone insane that we've allowed this apartheid-supporting, genocidal, murdering son of a you-know-what to have this much power and influence in the decisions he's going to make. I think the United States needs to do more to put pressure on this guy. You see the Biden administration, making, frankly speaking, and I'm no fan of Joe Biden. I think anybody knows this, but some very, at this juncture, late in the game, very late in the game, but, courageous decisions, because we are in the final month of a very contentious political election here for the presidency of the United States. And Joe Biden's preferred candidate, Kamala Harris, of course, will be impacted by any policy decisions that Joe Biden makes. And traditionally, it's very, very difficult for American politicians to do anything that is seen as negative towards Israel. And yet now we see the Biden administration taking steps that aren't pro-Israeli in nature, to confront them at the United Nations, to have a contentious phone call, the contents of which will undoubtedly be leaked to the press in the near future. This takes some political courage, because the easy step is just to kowtow to the pro-Israeli lobby and do what every American has done before them. But it's become impossible for the Biden administration to turn their backs on the imagery that all Americans are seeing now: the decapitated babies, the flayed babies, the dismembered babies. Every day on Telegram, you see them in Lebanon, in Gaza, in the West Bank, a result of the brutal deprivations of this murderous Israeli government headed by this genocidal maniac, Benjamin Netanyahu. I think that, the reality of the horrors of the Israeli crimes are such that they've created a new political dynamic in America, where it's now possible for an American politician at the level of the executive to stand up to Israel. We keep sending them money to kill babies. But now we have a situation where we have Americans in need in Florida, in Georgia, in South Carolina, in Tennessee, and North Carolina. Millions of Americans who've lost their homes, who've lost electricity, who've lost running water, missing, loved ones missing, people dead, communities in total devastation. And we don't have enough money for them, apparently. and yet we're sending money to Israel. I think we've reached a tipping point in the United States where sending money to Israel is no longer a politically viable option. And therefore, it's become easier now for Joe Biden to stand up to Israel, especially when what Israel's doing is so horrific that even the most staunch pro-Israeli, person in America is starting to say, it's too much. We've got to find a way to ratchet it back.
Thank you, Scott. So looks like we are at the point of no return here. However, again, I'm not an expert. I have a feeling that they are the same gang. I think it's just an illusion that they are not supporting this. I think behind the curtain, however this Wizard of Oz curtain looks like, they are saying, do whatever you want, and we got you back. And I think we are at the brink of, that's what they have done to us human beings, at the war that will be Christian against Muslims, white against blacks, all of this divide. So my next question actually is supposed to be about Israel, but we will go back. But I want to ask you, as someone who I like to study when I have time, Sun Tzu, Chinese famous military expert and general, said, if you know the enemy and know yourself, you need no fear the results of the 100 battles. So maybe we should ask ourselves the main question here. Who really is the enemy?
Well, the answer is easy. Look in the mirror, America. The enemy's staring back at you. We're our own worst enemy. America has become the number one pariah in the world today. I just challenge people who reject this and say, no, America's the force for good. What good have we done? I mean, literally, since the end of the Cold War, what good have we done? What have we done that's generated a force of good? The expansion of NATO has created potential for nuclear Armageddon with Russia, and it's led to the absolute destruction of the state of Ukraine. What good have we done? Our unquestioned support of Israel has led to this genocidal state, the death of tens of thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands of Palestinian civilians, and now the ongoing slaughter of thousands of Lebanese civilians. It's led to the total destruction of Gaza, the ongoing destruction of Beirut. It's led to war. What good have we done? Our intervention in Iraq was illegal. It led to the deaths of millions of Iraqis. What good have we done? We intervened in Libya, got rid of Muammar Gaddafi, who was the head of a peaceful state, a prosperous state. And now look at it. It's a basket case. What good have we done? We occupied Afghanistan for 20 years in the promise of ridding Afghanistan of the Taliban. And the Taliban are back. Whatever we thought we were doing for Afghan women is now even worse. What good have we done? There isn't a single place you can point in the earth today and say, oh, America touched that and it got better. Everything we touch dies. We don't seek to help anybody. We are selfish. Even when we go out there with the Peace Corps and the United States Agency for International Development, it's not about helping them. It's called soft power. We sell it as soft power. We go in, and the idea is to influence and gain control over the targeted entity using soft power as opposed to hard power. We seek regime change. When you don't agree with us, we seek to remove your sovereign abilities and replace them with entities that are controlled by us. That's all we're about. We're a giant puppet master whose sole job is to go in and convert whatever flesh you have into wood and tie a string onto it so that we can turn you into a puppet. That's it. I challenge anybody to come up with anything that America has done that is good during this period of time. And you can't. We are the global problem. We are not the solution. We sell ourselves as being exceptional and indispensable, but there's nothing exceptional for our abject failures of humanity. And indispensable, the world will survive without us. They die when they bring us in. America has to change. The American people are good people. I'm not being critical too much of them. I know my neighbors. I know this country. I know we have good people, but we elect bad leaders who implement horrific policies that feed the demands of we the people. As long as we want this lifestyle that we have to recognize the reality that it's unsustainable unless we continue to siphon off the resources of the world at under terms and conditions that are advantage to us. We can't pay fair market price. That's why we need tiny little Congolese children to go out there and break up cobalt into tiny pieces, poisoning their bodies. We don't care about them. This is why we allow ongoing. When was the last time people talked about the ongoing wars in Congo? A million dead black people. There's the problem. They're black. They don't count. Subhuman, they're monkeys. They're this, they're that. All the racist crap that's out there. And even Black America is racist. Well, they're Africans. Not all of Black America. I'm just saying that America as a whole is indifferent to the suffering of millions of Africans who are dying in this war, this ongoing war, this never-ending war that's all about maintaining political structures that feed us the resources we have to have. How many Americans, if you really knew the cost, the human cost that went into producing all the crap that goes into this cell phone, maybe we should stop using cell phone. I'm a hypocrite. Hell, I got one of these things. It's indispensable in my life. It's a walking computer. And so I talk this talk, but really, but the reality is by myself, I can't do anything. And collectively, nobody wants to make that decision, but we'll at least be honest. We are allowing slave labor in Africa to continue in horrific conditions so that these innocents are slaughtered. They're going to all die young. All the kids in there are sucking in this poison in their body. They're all going to die young. We don't care. Meanwhile, their parents are being butchered in wars that we promote. We could stop these wars, but we don't stop these wars because we have to have the political elites in place that allow this corruption to take place so that we can live. This is America. America, the drug trade. What keeps the drug trade going? Let's be honest. Spoiled white middle class and upper class people who want to put cocaine up their nose. There it is. And so they want the cocaine. South America has the cocaine. And as long as we want it, they'll find a way to get it to us. And that market's there. And the government's found out how to tap into that, make that a money-making enterprise. And the war on drugs is not a war on drugs. A war on drugs is a money-making institution for the United States government that uses the war on drugs to impose more control mechanisms on the population while generating additional income generating jobs through so-called law enforcement, etc. We were in Afghanistan and, we kept saying that the Taliban are the worst people in the world. Why? Well, because they use the opium trade to fund their operations. The Taliban are going, no, we want to get rid of drugs. We were actually doing a pretty good job about it before you came in and blew us up. So they kicked us out August 2021. You know how much opium is being produced in Afghanistan today? Zero. The Taliban have shut it down. Shut it down. It's amazing what happens when you get people who are serious about the war on drugs. But we're not serious about a war on drugs. We're serious about the political control that we can impose on South American countries through the facade of the war on drugs to get them addicted to American aid in largesse. So, but you don't want to solve the problem. But it's the same thing with weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. For the longest time, the United States didn't want to disarm Iraq. I know that because I was the weapons inspector trying to disarm him, and I was blocked more by America than I was by the Iraqis because disarming it actually solves the problem. And we need the problem to facilitate our policy of taking over the region. So we have to allow Iraq to be, operate under the fiction that they are pursuing weapons of mass destruction programs that no longer exist and can be documented as not existing, but you have to maintain the facade of a threat for weapons of mass destruction so you can keep this policy in place. It's the same thing with the war on drugs. We have to keep the drugs going because then we can justify the control mechanisms that we put in place over South America and the control mechanisms that we put in place in America today. The government could stop all of this crap that happens in America but through sound policy, but we don't because we don't want to stop it. The secret is we need Americans to be addicted because that addiction creates weaknesses that then the government exploits through societal controls and legal controls. This is the reality of it all. America is the biggest pariah nation in the world today. We commit most of the crimes in the world today. We're responsible for most of the death and destruction in the world today. There's not a damn thing we do in the world that's good. Not a damn thing. And that's the reality of it. We are the problem. And yet we point an accusatory finger around the world. Every single problem out there is manifested because of our actions, cause and effect relationships. Newton's third law of physics applied to geopolitics. America does something, there's a reaction. And the way our system works is that reaction then is used as justification for us to do something else, designed to generate a reaction that is just, how do you think the military-industrial complex continues to sustain itself? It needs war. It needs conflict, constant, permanent state of war to justify the expenditures, which logically most Americans would say doesn't make any sense. Why should we spend trillions of dollars to build nuclear weapons, which if we ever use, we all die from? But we continue to build trillions of dollars worth of weapons because we've created the perception of the need for these weapons. Instead of promoting disarmament using diplomacy, we have the military-industrial complex linked into Congress that has this perpetual state of war. Our policies are designed on purpose to generate friction around the world that then it turns into crises, which turns into military potential or actual military operations that justify the existence of the military-industrial commission. We are the greatest threat to the world today. We, the United States of America. If we disappeared today, the world would be a much better place.
I appreciate this, Scott. Can I say something here? I was thinking to tell you this when I was listening to what you said. And I think this is the biggest trap for all of us in the world, because there is an American who is bringing the supply to someone who he doesn't know, who has been affected by Helena or Milton now or other disasters. And there is another American who is working in FEMA, who is confiscating everything that the other one is bringing to the victims. And I think ultimately the enemy is the evil spirit that infiltrated the governments, organizations, and certain people who sold their souls to the devil. This is my perception. And this is not about being religious. This is about looking like from the bigger picture. Because at the end of the day, it's not about the country, it's about that spirit, that energy that takes over. And this especially is in the Western culture for a very long time. I'm not saying that there are no problems in the Arabic countries and there is crime and there is aggression and there is corruption. I'm not saying there is not. Of course there is, but it's a spirit of evil. And this is, I think this is what Russia, again, I'm not trying to idolize Russia, everyone, please. But I think this is what Russia is fighting with and is ever-going battle. That's how I see it, but it's just my perception. So everyone, please leave in the comments down below. Scott doesn't have much time, so I really want to ask one question from the viewer I see, but there is one question I have about Ukraine. Because yes, this is still going on, even though we know Russia is winning, but still people are dying pointlessly. At a summit in Croatia, Zelensky said, quoting, "The situation on the battlefield creates an opportunity to make this choice a choice for decisive action to end the war no later than in 2025. And we are continuing, and I make mistake, and we are counting on President Biden's leadership. We rely on the strong and wise steps of Britain, France, Germany, and Italy to bring security and peace to Europe. The situation on the battlefield creates an opportunity to make this choice, a choice in favor of decisive action to end this war no later than 2025. My question here is, what is his definition of the decisive action? It doesn't mean doubling down on the chemical weapons that they have been, as we know, using for a very long time. What is this? Is this like the last big bang? Something. What is this decisive action, Scott?
I mean, this is a theme that's played over and over again, and it's based upon the support that is provided. The first decisive action, of course, was the counterattack that took place in the fall of 2022, that allowed Ukrainians to recapture most of Kharkov, drive the Russians out of the right bank of Kherson, etc. But that led to a Russian reaction. And so the next decisive action to end this war was the counteroffensive of 2023, the summer counteroffensive, where Ukraine literally bled to death in the fields of Zaporizhia, outside of Bakhmut, in Avdiivka and other places, as that failed. And now, their next one was, help us defend against the Russian attacks. That's failed. The decisive action right now isn't on the battlefield. Ukraine's run out of infantry, and there's nothing the West can do to save that. Ukraine, is running out of equipment. The Western arsenals are empty. The decisive action now hinges on Ukraine's ability, according to Zelensky, to inflict harm on Russia strategically. To be able to strike deep inside Russia, to strike command and control, logistics, communications, military production, etc., deep inside airfields, oil production, oil storage, to inflict strategic harm on Russia, so as to break the spirit of Russians to continue this war, and they will put political pressure on Putin, and Putin will then come crawling to the negotiating table and accept the peace dictated by Ukraine. It's a fantasy. It's ridiculous. I mean, anybody who studies the history of Russia understands that Russia was part of a Soviet Union, the most important component of a Soviet Union that took 27 million casualties to defeat Nazi Germany. I'm not saying that Ukraine's capable of inflicting that kind of damage, but whatever Ukraine thinks it can inflict, it isn't going to change the outcome. It's only going to harden Russian resolve. But the dangerous part is that Ukraine needs the West to provide. Ukraine can't do this on its own volition, and therein lies the problem, that if the West does provide Ukraine with this capability to achieve this decisive victory, they become a party to the conflict, and Russia's put the West on notice. That means that Russia will strike them, that this will stop being a special military operation, this will transition into open warfare, and this will turn into a nuclear conflict, and we all die. It's that simple. So everybody who listens to Zelensky should just understand that because he can't do this on himself. He's a defeated, I can't even call him president anymore, because he's lost all legitimacy, because he is, foregone electoral processes. Even Ukrainians start to say, who the hell are you to dictate these solutions to us? The Ukrainian people haven't spoken. You're not the president. That's not our parliament. We've got problems. He's losing support at home. This is an act of desperation, which is literally collective suicide. This is a man who is so desperate to remain in power, so desperate to buy into the notion of victory that he's been told, guaranteed by the West. I mean, Olaf Scholz, we will be with you until the end. But now Olaf Scholz saying, well, the end is going to be a negotiated settlement where you have to accept Russia holding on to territories. This is suicide. Collective suicide. It'll be the end of us all. It will be a nuclear war. Again, I promote Andy Jacobson's outstanding book, Nuclear War Scenario. It's on the bookshelf behind me. I bought it this past weekend and read it cover to cover twice, and I'm going to read it again because I have to. I have to scare myself to death before I go to bed every night to continue to maintain the sense of urgency in trying to stop a nuclear war. Zelensky is about creating the conditions for a nuclear war. That's it, plain and simple. That's the only way he can get out of this problem, is to take everybody else down with us. And he's at that point, this final act of desperation. And I would hope that the West would see through this. I would hope the American people would see through this and understand that if you support Ukraine today, if you continue to support Ukraine, it means that you want to commit suicide. It'll be an act of collective suicide.
Thank you, Scott. I think NATO is absolutely bipolar, because even me, that I really don't know much about those things. I just follow it as a regular citizen. There was an interview that Stoltenberg gave, right? And he said, we know very well, I'm paraphrasing, that we are behind the Russians. And the only regret that I have is that we would give them those more intense, stronger weapons sooner than we did. And then we have Mark Rutte, the new one, the new, the new joker in this, who says that Ukraine is the closest to NATO that has ever been. So it's bipolar, pretty much, this whole situation. One question from the viewer.
I'll just remind Stoltenberg, I mean, and everybody who listens to him as if he has any credibility. Go back to 2014. You had Maidan, which is a CIA brokered Nazi coup d'etat. Literally, we now know that it was the right sector snipers up on the roof killing their own people to try and pass the blame to the Russians. We know that. There's no debate about that. We know what happened. We know how the CIA backed this up. We know how the United States handpicked the government of Ukraine, and we know for what reasons the CIA establishing bases on the border with Russia, the whole thing. But it led to a conflict with the Russian-speaking people of the Donbass, backed up by the Russian military, that resulted in the Ukrainian army being surrounded. And Vladimir Putin was in a position at the end of 2014, early 2015, where he could have removed Ukraine from the face of the planet, because the Ukrainian army at that time wasn't this massive NATO-built army, and its best fighters were surrounded in the Donbass, and they were all going to die. And Vladimir Putin was in a position to order their deaths. This is where France, the President Hollande, and Angela Merkel, the Chancellor of Germany, came crawling to Putin, begging, please don't kill them. Please don't do this. Please, let's have peace. And Putin agreed. He's regretted this decision. He said, I could have ended it all right then. I could have eliminated the Ukrainian army. We never would have had to worry about any of this. Because if you eliminate the Ukrainian army, everything else collapses. And then you would get a pro-Russian government. Maybe even Viktor Yanukovych could have returned to Kiev. But instead, he opted for the Minsk peace process. And then for 8 years, he stood by while NATO retrained. But the point in bringing this up is, what does Stoltenberg think was going to happen in 2014? What weapons could you have provided, Stoltenberg? This is the insanity of somebody who has forgotten history and is ignorant as the day is long. The notion that NATO could have done a damn thing in 2014 to change this outcome is absurd. Russia defeated the Ukrainian army. The Ukrainian army was surrounded. They were all going to die. And they only lived because Vladimir Putin bought into the lies of the West, that they were honestly going to try and achieve a peace that would be equitable for all parties. That's one of Putin's rare mistakes. And it wasn't a mistake at the time. It was the right decision at the time. But now that he's been lied to by the West, you really think he's going to be inclined to sit down and negotiate with them again? Not on your life. Not after losing as many people as he has in this war. Not after the suffering of the Russian people. Not after sacrifices they've made. This war will end in a decisive Russian victory. That's the only outcome there. And Stoltenberg can try and reinvent history all he wants, but anybody knowledgeable of the actual facts on the ground know that Stoltenberg is lying about everything.
Okay, thank you, Scott. So, one question from the viewer. I will justify my own question for this question because we don't have enough time. Scott, what does it mean, I think? What does it mean that Biden changed plan and don't go to Europe-Ukraine meeting, I think? And Blinken was brought back home from Asia, not to the Ukraine meet. Thank you for your question, by the way.
Well, it's a good question. The United States is abandoning Ukraine. The Ukraine meeting was supposed to be at the 25th meeting of the Ramstein Contact Group, where, Ukraine, together with Great Britain, wants to put pressure on the United States to sign off on the release of the Storm Shadow missiles and the TACAM missiles that can be used to attack Russian targets. I think Biden understands. He was told in no uncertain terms by the Russian government that Russia will retaliate and that America doesn't get to sit and separated by two oceans and pretend that there will be consequences. Anatoly Antonov said that if this thing goes nuclear, the nuclear conflict will not be confined to Europe, that America will be struck. And I think the Biden administration has woken up to that reality. So there will be no continuation of this. I think right now, rather than continuing to feed the fantasies of Zelensky, which is all these meetings do, is they sort of justify Zelensky. Zelensky's now in 10 Downing Street meeting with Keir Starmer. And it's like, feeding the fantasies. He comes out with these illusions of grandeur. It's like Hitler again in the bunker in that in the classic movie Downfall, where Hitler's moving imaginary armies and he's going to win the war because he could draw an arrow and say Steiner's going to come here, and the generals are sitting there going, there ain't no Steiner. Steiner doesn't exist anymore. Wenck isn't there. Ninth Army doesn't work. And right now Zelensky's being told that Steiner's coming to his Wenck's army. The Ninth Army is coming. That's my next interview, but they're just going to have to wait. And I think what Biden is doing is putting a marker down, saying, stop it, stop feeding the fantasy. We need to inject reality here. Zelensky has to stop believing that there's going to be a battlefield solution. There is no battlefield solution. It's a diplomatic solution, and Zelensky has to get on board with this. And so we're just going to stop feeding the fantasy. And I think that's why he's not going to meet in Europe.
Thank you so much, Scott. Apparently, Hitler survived and he had a longer life in Argentina. So I just wonder what's going to happen to Zelensky if he's going to escape to, I don't think to Argentina.
I don't know.
Who knows? Who knows?
Trotsky fled to Mexico. And eventually a Soviet agent got next to him, put an ice pick in his brain. I'm not condoning that. I'm not saying
someone's gonna find him, right, Scott? Someone's gonna find him.
Zelensky will not die an old man in a rocking chair, having lived a long and fruitful life. Zelensky will die a scared man. Let's just say that he will suffer the fate of Stepan Bandera. Wherever he runs, they will get him. And at some point in time, he's going to be walking up the stairway to his apartment, and somebody's going to get him and shoot him or poison him or kill him. But that's his fate, and it's one that I can't say that he doesn't deserve. I'm not condoning it. I'm not asking for it. I'm just saying that that's the inevitability of Zelensky and his cronies. They will not die old men.
Scott, thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate your time. Thank you everyone for watching. Make sure to get our book if you haven't already. I don't normally push it like Jamaicano style, but this means a lot. So please get it. And if you would like to follow Scott's work and get other books of his, also, Scott has just put on his website. I didn't have time to talk about it. I really wanted to, but that question from the viewer took over. Scott put a very beautiful project made by his daughter, and I really, really love it. So check it out. It's right there down below. It will touch your heart and makes you think about what really matters in life. Thank you, everyone, and we see you next time. Bye, guys.
Thanks.